The Vatican has stated that Pope Francis has contracted double pneumonia, further complicated treatment for the 88-year-old pontiff. The Israeli occupation forces informed that they will remain in southern Lebanon despite the expiration of the deadline to withdraw completely from the Arab territory. And Ecuador's Congress announced the start of investigations into the increase in violence that has claimed the lives of more than 1,000 people since January 2025. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The Vatican has stated that Pope Francis has contracted double pneumonia, further complicated treatment for the 88-year-old pontiff. On Tuesday, the Vatican said Francis' respiratory infection also involves asthmatic bronchitis, which requires the use of cortisone antibiotic treatment. Francis has been suffering from a respiratory infection for more than a week and was admitted to the Gemelli Hospital in Rome, Italy on February 14th. The Vatican also declared that laboratory tests, chest X-ray and the Holy Father's clinical condition continue to present a complex picture. The Pope, however, is in good spirits. A Vatican official noted that the pontiff had not been put on a ventilator and was breathing on his own. It was also announced that all public events on the Pope's calendar had been cancelled through Sunday. In Russia, residents of Kursk who lost their homes will receive a monthly compensation by order of President Vladimir Putin. According to authorities, the amount of the subsidy reaches $710, while the border region is liberated by the Russian forces. The measure announced on Tuesday will benefit more than 112,000 people, both pensioners and children, as well as citizens and workers. The figure equals the average salary in the Kursk region and is intended to compensate for the material losses that the residents of the area have suffered as a result of the Ukrainian attacks. In Saudi Arabia, Russia and the United States reached agreements to promote and strengthen bilateral relations. The Russian presidential advisor Yury Ushakov said that both delegations discussed a number of issues, including strengthening bilateral relations, as both sides are interested in this. The Russian spokesman indicated that Moscow and Washington agreed to take into account the interest of the other party in order to normalize cooperation. These are the first meetings between the two powers since the beginning of the Russian special operation in Ukraine. No specific date has yet been set for Presidents Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump to meet. In a press briefing, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that both governments agreed to send diplomatic personnel to the embassies in Moscow and Washington. The foreign minister added that both parties also agreed to form a process to settle the conflict in Ukraine. Lavrov further said that the renewed talks aim to create conditions for mutual cooperation in order to regain previous levels and further develop in different spheres.
Our deputies will meet as soon as possible and consider the need to remove these artificial barriers to the work of embassies and other Russian institutions in the United States and that of the United States in Russia. And without concentrating on any particular manifestation of these obstacles, they will try to take a systematic approach in order to put an end, once and for all, to these inconveniences, which really hamper the development of everyday, normal relations.
In statements to the press after the meeting, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Washington and Moscow showed a great interest in resuming talks on geopolitical issues, finding a solution to the conflict in Ukraine and strengthening diplomatic relations between both countries.
There was a great interest, which we share, in resuming consultations on geopolitical issues, including various conflicts in various parts of the world, where both the United States and Russia have interests. And there was a big interest in removing artificial barriers to the development of mutually beneficial economic cooperation. We have agreed that a process on the Ukrainian settlement will be formed in the near future. The American side will inform us who will represent Washington in this task. And as soon as we know the name and position of the relevant representative, we will, as President Putin told President Trump, immediately designate our participant in this process.
The Israeli occupation forces informed that they will remain in southern Lebanon despite the expiration of the deadline to withdraw completely from the Arab territory. According to Zionist Lieutenant Colonel Nadav Shoshani, the Israeli troops would remain temporarily in five strategic vantage points just across the border in Lebanese territory until the Arab nations military fully implemented its end of the agreement. On the other hand, the Lebanese government condemned the prolonged presence of Israeli soldiers in its territory and described it as an occupation. This is the second time that Israel violates the terms of the ceasefire deal, since initially its forces were supposed to have withdrawn from southern Lebanon by the end of last November. Thousands of Lebanese citizens have returned to their homes in the south of the country after Israeli troops withdraw from some civilian areas. At the same time, Lebanese soldiers established themselves in the post occupied by Israel and began work to clear the territory of possible explosive materials. During the conflict, more than 4,000 civilians from Lebanon lost their lives, more than 1 million were displaced, and dozens of houses were destroyed by the Zionist fire. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, thousands flee to Burundi as the M23 rebel group takes over Bukavu, South Kivu. Over 10,000 displaced people crossed the Rusizi River, while another group of residents fled from the Kamanyola area, camping in the northwestern Burundian province of Cibitoke. Burundi authorities briefly closed the border crossing between the two nations as a precaution to moderate the flow of refugees. The M23 took Bukavu after capturing the city of Goma in North Kivu, as well as the town of Kavumu and its airport. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back from the south. The government of Panama is holding in custody more than 299 migrants from different nationalities who arrived from the United States on February 12 as part of the mass deportation plan carried out by Trump's administration. According to local media, the government of José Raúl Mulino intends to transfer the migrants to shelters in the Darien region and then sending them to their countries of origin. In this context, the deported migrants denounced that they were locked in a hotel, stripped of their passports and cellular phones, and forbidden to see their lawyers. The deportees arrived in the country during a period marked by tensions between Panama and the United States due to the ongoing threats of President Donald Trump to retake control of the Panama Canal. The government of Venezuela rejected on Tuesday through a communique a false flag operation carried out by the government of Guyana. The official statement starts by reinforcing that the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela categorically rejects the vile montage promoted by the government of Guyana, which through its foreign minister Hugh Hilton thought intends to spread a hostile and malicious false narrative about an alleged attack against Guyanese troops. This is a false flag operation and fake news designed to manipulate public opinion and divert attention from the violations of international law that Guyana is committing in the Guyana Essequiba. The communique follows by unveiling Venezuela is investigating the facts, and the first elements gathered point to the fact that elements linked to illegal mining, which operating in the Guyana Essequiba under the protection of the Guyanese army and police, were attacked and injured. These citizens are currently receiving medical attention in Venezuelan territory. We denounce that the government of Guyana, in its eagerness to cover up its illegal actions in the disputed territory, resorts to disinformation and warmongering propaganda to justify its increasing militarization supported by the United States Southern Command, which constitutes a threat to regional peace. The official communication also states Venezuela demands that foreign ministers of Guyana cease his aggressions and lies, and that instead of fomenting confrontation, he complies with his obligations under the Geneva Agreement of 1966, which establishes direct negotiation between the parties as the only way to resolve the territorial dispute. In its closing remarks, the communique reads, "The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela reaffirms its firm commitment to peace and to the restitution of its sovereign rights over Guyana Essequiba in strict adherence to international law and historical truth." Also in Venezuela, the Symposium on Digital Rights and Coexistence moves forward with the participation of at least 50 peace justices. Participants address issues related to the impact of new technologies in the Venezuelan society. Speakers highlighted the role of the Bolivarian Revolution to face the technological phenomenon and allow a fair system of participation and wills. This space is to reflect on the role of social media and to provide a correct use of the same. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced that all repatriated migrants, including those who do so voluntarily, will receive support from the government.
We can give them shelter and access to all supportive initiatives. If they return voluntarily, if they approach one of the shelters, or even if they are at the border, there are colleagues who are taking care of them. So, of course, even if they return voluntarily, they are repatriated. Therefore, they have access to all the support provided
Sheinbaum
by the state.
further indicated that the Mexican administration has been continuously working with the U.S. government, noting that the nation's plan aims at surging domestic production and of goods and services.
We have been continuously working with the U.S. government. We think we'll get through it. We are always positive, and we are doing everything we can to ensure that this process goes well, of course, without compromising our principles. Principles of sovereignty, of non-intervention and non-interference, that this is our top priority and it is our responsibility as Mexicans, women and men, and even more as President of the Republic. But well, this joint work with the U.S. government is underway. In addition, we have been proposing this project since much earlier. This program, this plan called Mexico's Plan, which has the goal of soaring the national production of goods and services.
And we have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final show break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Confederation of Indigenous Peoples and Farmer Organizations of Ecuador, FEI, reaffirmed its support for candidate Luisa González on April 13th runoff election. On a communique, FEI members stressed the importance of uniting all social movements and popular sectors to achieve a landslide electoral victory. Likewise, they noted that the Citizens' Revolution Party rose up as a political and social response to an oligarchic system that neglected the people's needs and favored powerful groups. Moreover, the Confederation warned of the offensive of traditional elites to stop these advances through agencies such as USAID and CIA. Meanwhile, nominee Luisa González posted on social media her gratitude to FEI, underscoring the historic struggle of indigenous peoples in defense of their land and their dignity. Ecuador's Congress announced the start of investigations into the increasing violence that has claimed the lives of more than 1,000 people since January 2025. Precisely, the president of the country's National Assembly, Viviana Veloz, stated that the current situation demonstrates a resounding failure of both the security policies and the Phoenix Plan promoted by the government of President Daniel Noboa. The head of the parliament regretted that the recent violent events have minors as collateral victims. Furthermore, Veloz considered inadmissible and of great concern the appointment of General Fausto Buanaño as new Minister of the Interior, since he is presumably linked to acts of corruption.
A new investigative process will be initiated regarding the increase of violence and citizen insecurity. So far this year, we have had more than 1,050 violent deaths with collateral victims such as minors, which demonstrates a complete failure of security policies and also of the national government's Phoenix Plan.
The Chamber of Deputies of Paraguay accepted on Tuesday the resignation of parliamentarian Orlando Arévalo, who is currently being investigated for punishable acts related to corruption and criminal association. After an extraordinary session debate that started at 10 in the morning, the Paraguayan lower house unanimously accepted Arévalo's petition. Precisely, the former deputy had presented his resignation on February 8th after private conversations between him and the late legislator Eulalio Gomez, who allegedly contacted him when he acted as a representative of the legislative body before the judge's prosecution jury. Mayan communities in Guatemala celebrate a new solar year with a spiritual ceremony. Hundreds of indigenous Mayan people in Guatemala ushered in the new year according to their calendar with a spiritual ceremony at the sacred Mayan site of Caminal Juhu in Guatemala City on Tuesday. According to the Sholab Mayan calendar, February 18th marks the start of a new era or cycle. In this regard, native people in Guatemala have different ways of counting time and use different calendars, but they recognize the solar Sholab as the main calendar and the one that governs the Mayan year.
On this day of the Mayan calendar, we are celebrating several municipalities and departments because today we are starting a new year of 360 days plus 5 days called Uayep. There is nothing better than inhaling and exhaling on this day because toward with cleansing our energy and bodies and start our new year anew.
And with this information, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.
We share your feelings, exalt your accomplishments, and show your reality. Our approach is global and keeps